Hi, my name is Mark Hundley, and this is Live at 5. So, welcome to Live at 5 for a Friday afternoon. I appreciate you taking time at the end of your week, at the end of your day, to join me for just a few minutes of contemplation and digging into conversations that are unique and perhaps helpful. We've been talking a little bit about this Skin Horse and the Velveteen Rabbit from The Velveteen Rabbit by Marjorie Williams, but I'm thinking that the skin horse of this book is perhaps one of the wisest beings ever to grace this planet, in flesh or written word, either way. The wisdom imparted via the conversation created by Marjorie Williams between the skin horse and the Velveteen Rabbit is some of the most profound you'll find anywhere. The focus of this fairly well-known conversation is what is necessary for one to become real, or rather a modern kind of idea, although it was written in 1922. This is the sixth video using this particular conversation as a jumping off point. Thus far, we have discovered that real is a process of becoming that takes a long time. We have also discovered that sometimes when one is real, it hurts. In the last video, we learned that real doesn't often happen to people who break easily. Today's segment is given to the notion that real doesn't often happen to people who have sharp edges. People who have sharp edges. Think about it. How often do you run into people who have sharp edges? My guess is that it's fairly often, perhaps more often than even we're aware. People with sharp edges are difficult to be around, difficult to communicate with, difficult to love. They're difficult to embrace. They are just plain difficult to handle. You see, people who have sharp edges are defensive on all levels, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally. They're just defensive. People who have sharp edges have experienced trauma in some form or another in their lives. The levels and extent to which they have been traumatized varies. Some have experienced relatively minor trauma in life, and I guess we could all fit into that category. In some form or fashion, we've experienced some sort of trauma, while others have experienced either pronounced, acute, or chronic trauma over longer periods of time. One of the ways that we as human beings work to deal with the effects of trauma is to incorporate into our behavior defense mechanisms that help us to cope, defense mechanisms. Some of these defensive behaviors become so ingrained that we create sharp edges to keep other people away from us. We create sharp edges to stay safe, avoid pain, preserve respectability when that's necessary, to maintain a sense of security, and control the amount and source of abuse we might experience at other times in our lives. You see, when we begin to understand that defense mechanisms are employed to protect from further pain or abuse, we begin to have a key to helping ourselves and others build healthy boundaries rather than defensive, spiky walls. The skin horse understood that when people who have experienced abuse or trauma contemplate becoming real, they run the risk of retreating into a world designed to maintain a sense of control and safety, because becoming real, let's face it, is a pretty scary proposition. When this happens, sharp edges often develop. Sharp edges certainly keep others away, and therein lies the problem. Sharp edges keep other people away. That's why people who have sharp edges experience difficulty becoming real. Is there an answer to this? Well, perhaps. Earlier in this conversation, you may remember that the skin horse shared the answer when he said, when a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. All too often in this world, instead of experiencing healing, loving relationships, we actually wind up playing with the feelings and lives of others, and thereby sometimes causing irreparable, or what appears to be irreparable, pain. The answer lies in our ability to engage in love as close to that of a child as we possibly can. That's a tall order, isn't it? Well, allow me to share with you 3 simple suggestions that can empower us to demonstrate the love of a child in ways that help honor and heal people with sharp edges. The very first one is to practice self-love. It is impossible to share with other people what we fail to possess ourselves. There's a biblical passage that says something to this effect. It says, love your neighbor, and let's assume our neighbor is anyone around us, anyone close to us, anyone with whom we come in contact. It says to love your neighbor in the same manner you love yourselves. Now, sometimes when I'm dealing with couples and working with couples in therapy, and we get to this place of how you relate in a loving way, I say to them, and I share this little adage with them, we're to love one another in the same manner we love ourselves. And then I stop and I look at them and I said, and I think that's probably where our problem lies. We are loving each other in the same manner we love ourselves. And folks, many times we fail to love ourselves very well. So how in the world can we know what loving another person, being loved, feels like if we're not practicing self-love? You see how that works? So the very first thing that we can do to help people heal from those sharp edges that they create to protect themselves is learn to develop and nurture self-love. The second, we have to act lovingly toward others. Actions really are love in motion. Actions truly speak louder than words. I know we've heard that before. Actions speak louder than words, Mark. Actions speak louder than words. And yes, they do. But when we start thinking about actions that are loving, those kinds of actions far exceed the sometimes empty words of, gee, I love you, I love you. Well, I would much rather you show me that you love me than tell me and not show it. Showing people that you love them can be as simple as picking up a phone and making a telephone call, sending a note, sending a card, sending an email, sending a text, sending some flowers, dropping by with a birthday cake, unannounced. All of the small little things that let another person know they matter to you. That's a huge, huge way to express love. Finding out the love language of those around you and then doing the very best you can to meet them at the point of their love language. So acting lovingly toward others, being more than just a mouth, can be a huge help. The third part of this is remain persistent. Avoid giving up on those you love. I know that's hard sometimes. Man, this type of love helps smooth out the sharp edges better than anything. Sometimes when you're loving someone and they just keep sticking you and they keep sticking you and they keep cutting your heart and slicing through your resolve, keep loving them, because every time you come back, every time you're persistent, every time you show them that they are worth your time and worth your heart, you actually carve away, smooth away some of those sharp edges, and eventually you can help that person eliminate those sharp edges. We have to learn to love ourselves and others in ways that imitate the unconditional love of a child. We just do. Giving and receiving love in this manner just might be the path to real for people who have sharp edges. Now, guys, I know that I usually end my live at 5 on a Friday, but because there's one more type of person for whom the process of becoming real is difficult, I'm actually going to extend it till tomorrow, Saturday at 5 o'clock, and we're going to examine that final conversation tomorrow at 5, and we're going to be looking at people who have to be carefully kept. People who have to be carefully kept tomorrow at 5. So I really invite you to join me tomorrow afternoon on a Saturday at 5 o'clock. What else do you have to do, right? I could think of a lot of other things you have to do, but I would love to have you join me tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I want you to have a good end to the week, a good beginning to the weekend. Have a great evening, and thanks for dropping by. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.